Okay, so here we are at last, the kind of long-awaited Ducati Panigale V4. Been teased about this bike for probably 6 months or so now. We're going to hit the track here in Valencia today and see if we can put this 214 horsepower, I don't know if I've said that enough times, see if we can put this 214 horsepower bike to the test around this tight twisting track. If Ducati have done their job right, we're going to feel like gods. If they've done their job wrong, we'll be in the fences over there. Let's go and find out. So, it's me, Chris Northover. I'm back. I've been wheeled out for the annual Ducati launch. We've been here in Valencia. We're going to ride the new V4 Panigale. It's a big deal for Ducati, that V4. I mean, yes, they've been using it in their MotoGP bike for a few years now, but for Ducati to bring out their flagship road bike and drop the V-twin, switch to the V4, that's kind of a big deal for them, and they had a big thing about it in the presentation last night. Ducati is V-twin. For years, the iconic Ducatis have always been a twin-cylinder engine, and now for the first time, they've stepped away. They've gone to the V4. We asked the engineers about this. They said they're not worried about the performance of the V-twin. They had more performance to come out of the V-twin concept, but the issue was the size and the packaging. To do what they wanted to increase the performance of that engine, the engine was going to have to physically grow, and as soon as you do that, you lost frame, you lost space. So the decision was taken 4 years ago to switch to the V4 engine concept. This is a more compact engine for Ducati. They've got incredible power, but the big thing they're trying to get with this bike, and the thing they went on a lot about in the presentation, is a usable bike. The Panigale is well known for being a very exciting bike. The 1199 and the 1299 Panigales were busy, I think is a polite way of putting it. You knew you were riding one of them, and you knew you'd been riding it for the next week or so. They were an angry bike, bars would flick, they'd fight you. Fantastically fun to ride. You never got off one of them without a massive smile on your face, but they were hard work. Ducati's point with the Panigale V4 was accessible performance. They wanted everyone to be able to get on this bike, out of pit lane and go fast straight away. And that has been the biggest thing they've pushed for. In order to achieve that, the V4 engine has a much broader spread of power, broad spread of torque as well, to give you a bit more flexibility on the engine when you're driving through the corners. And they've gone, frankly, a bit nuts on the electronics. They've got slide control, they've got a backing in control when you can jam on the back brake and make the bike slide sideways into a corner, but it won't let you crash. They've got anti-wheelie, they've got so many rider modes and adjustment and control that the bike almost feels uncrashable. That was their point with it. In addition to that, they've made a lot of changes to the chassis. They've tried to use the V4, the smaller V4 engine, to give them a bit more room to dial in the flex of the frame. It's something that's been talked about for years on motorcycles, and it's still seen as a bit of a black art, but what Ducati have done, have got more flex in that frame, a bit more feel from the front end, in order to make a bike that handles nicely and is easy to push hard. One of the big MotoGP kind of buzzwords they've achieved is the counter-rotating crankshaft. Bit of sciencey technical stuff, but essentially the crankshaft on a normal motorcycle, on a conventional bike, spins the same way as the wheels. So you've got all that gyroscopic effect when you're trying to turn into the corners. On the V4 Panigale, the crankshaft spins backwards in the opposite direction to the wheels, and thus cancels out a bit of that gyroscopic forces in the turn. And also when you get the torque reaction as you accelerate the bike hard out of a corner, the way the crankshaft turn actually tries to push the front wheel back down, so it helps reduce the wheelies on the bike. So there's a lot of technical waffle there, but essentially the point is Ducati have tried to make a bike that handles sweetly, it's easier to ride faster. Look, look, look. It's a new one. Been a long time in the waiting for this. We've had a whole evening and a whole morning of technical presentations. Basically, they've told us we can go full gas and it won't kill us. So let's give it a go. Can't wait. We're 10 minutes away from our first session on the new V4 Panigale. thing is something else. It really is. It's easily the easiest Ducati to ride yet. So much speed and power. The only thing that's hard about it is the electronics let you go so fast that physically it's hard to hold on. What a bike. Okay, so for the new V4 Panigale, there are 3 versions available. There's your everyman version, not that any Ducati hyperbike's an any man bike, but yeah, your base model, which is the Panigale V4, 214 horsepower, 195 kilos. It's pretty awesome. Your next model up is your Panigale V4S, which comes with Öhlins mechatronic suspension, 2nd generation system of that. Comes with a few carbon fiber bits, a few kind of nice bits around the bike. So then the top dog one is the V4 Speciale, which is the cream of the crop, and it's a pretty special bike. They're only going to make 1,500 of these. The main headline of what it comes with is the Akropovic race exhaust system, which releases another 12 horsepower. So now we're talking 226 horsepower. Yeah, that's 226 horsepower and 188 kilos. This thing is unreal. This is performance that, forget superbike performance. This is MotoGP bike levels of performance out of something that you can buy from Ducati and you don't have to service for 15,000 kilometers. This is an unbelievable amount of performance out of this bike. I'm here with Alessandro Valia. Alessandro,
oh.
Ciao.
Ciao.
He is God, king of Ducati test riding. Alessandro, we're here at Valencia with the new V4 Panigale. Can you talk us around the lap? Talk us around your fast lap of this track.
It was amazing. I was pushing very hard, so the lap time was 1 minute and 35 seconds. Not bad, not too far from the 31 that is the record of the MotoGP with a standard bike.
So 4 seconds off MotoGP.
Yeah,
that's pretty special. Every bike that comes out at the moment, each manufacturer says, oh, the electronics are all new, we have this, we have this, we have this. But this one, I mean, you've taken quite a big step forward with, out of all the manufacturers, with what's available, with the slide control now and the skid control, the backing in on the brakes.
Yeah.
Can you just talk us through those a little bit?
We have this control on the rear on ABS2 that helps the rider. It's called slide by brake, and it helps the rider to slide during the entering of the corner like MotoGP or superbike races. So this system will work on the slide angle, on the yaw angle. There you have only to brake on the front and decide if you want to manage the rear, modulating the pressure, or go with a full pressure and let the system manage the pressure to keep this very constant and progressive slide. Yeah. I think amazing. You test it, and
so essentially what you're telling us is there's no excuse anymore.
No,
we can all be as fast as you.
Yeah, for sure, for
Thanks
sure.
for talking to us, Alessandro.
You're welcome.
Take
You're
care.
welcome.
So we finished the day here at Valencia. We've done 5 track sessions on board the V4 Panigale. We did most of our riding was on the V4S with the Öhlins suspension. We did a session each as well on the V4 Speciale. One thing I'm going to say is 226 horsepower is awesome. There is no other word for it. It is incredible. The hardest bit is holding onto the damn thing, and in a different way. The old Panigale, you fought it, you wrestled it around the track. This thing, there's no fighting, there's no wrestling. You're just struggling to hold onto it, just out of sheer G-force. The way it lays down the power out of a turn, and the aggression and the force with which you can break into the corners, it's nothing short of breathtaking. From the very first session, that V4 makes everything so much easier. Every rider came in from the first session surprised at how easy the bike was to ride, how quickly they felt at home on it. And that's a lot to say about a 1000cc bike around this Valencia track. Valencia is known for being tight, technical, a bit awkward. All the corners are 2nd and 3rd gear. But here today on the V4, everyone's found the bike a dream. It's so easy to ride and the performance is simply staggering. The slide control systems, instant GP god. It's like talent in a box. You go around the long last left-hander, and you just sit the throttle as wide open as you want, and the bike just comes out slightly and just sits there against the orange light flashes on the dash. You look like a hero, big black line around the corner. It's incredible. And the extra confidence you're afforded by these systems. So the cornering ABS, you can put the bike into the turn, brake hard as you're turning in, and if you overstep the mark, the ABS catches it for you. So let's talk about the engine itself. It's a V4, and it's kind of a V-twin hiding inside a V4. Come on, it's Ducati. They had to get some V-twin-ness in there somewhere. They made it up to 1100cc because they really wanted to get the torque and performance out of it. Yes, I know superbike class is supposed to be 1000cc, but hey, they're Italians, it's fine. So what they've done with this particular V4 is they've arranged the firing order to be a twin pulse firing order, which lots of boring stuff about crankshafts and firing orders, but essentially it feels more like a V-twin, and actually it sounds a lot like a V-twin. So you still get that Ducati feel. It doesn't feel that far removed from the 1299. There's a spread of power, it's smoother, but it's not chalk and cheese. Ducati is saying it's a 15,000 kilometer service interval on this bike. That's pretty unbelievable for something of this sort of level of racetrack performance. So you'd think with a bike like this, big power figures, new V4 engine, you'd think everything would be dominated by that engine and that power. But the real surprise here, the real bit that everyone has been blown away by, is the, I don't want to say intuitive handling, because that sounds a little bit cliche, it's a little bit pretentious, but it is intuitive. You know, you go into a corner, doesn't matter how fast you go in, you look for the apex and the thing just peels itself round to the apex. The front end is so solid. They've got a 54% front weight bias, maybe 53%. It's really heavily biased to the front wheel. And the thing just turns in and makes an apex, and you just push harder and harder and harder. And every time you turn your head, the bike drops in and the thing just hunts the apex. It doesn't feel like you're riding a big 1000cc bike. It feels like a sports bike, a super sports bike, until of course you get out the other side. And as well as that, with the new counter-rotating crankshaft, it actually holds the line really well on the throttle. This is another thing the engineers and the test riders were saying is a real crucial point to that crankshaft, is you get on the gas hard, and instead of the bike squatting and pushing wide, it almost feels like it tightens its line up, and you just end up going faster and faster into and out of corners until your arms are like jelly and your eyeballs have fallen out of your head. So looking at the suspension, on the base model bike, you've got a Showa big piston fork and a Showa shock. On the S and the Speciale, you've got the Öhlins Mechatronic electronic assist suspension. It's an incredible system, this Öhlins system, and what they've done is they've got a lot of complexity and a lot of ability in the electronic suspension system, but they've made it simple. So when you're going around the track, if you're thinking, okay, maybe the bike's running wide here, or maybe I'm struggling to brake as hard as I want, you go into the menu, you select whether it's acceleration, mid-corner, or braking you have a problem with, and then in those sections, there'll be a slider, and you can slide towards better stability on the brakes or more comfort. On acceleration, you can slide towards more grip or more stability. They've not tried to make it super technical. They've not just given you numbers and expected you to be a race engineer. They've actually made it very intuitive so that anyone can go in there and go, I have a problem here on the track. Right, that's the button I need to press. Tick, instant world-class suspension at the click of a button. So 226 horsepower on the Speciale. That's a lot of horsepower to be stopping at the end of the straight. Valencia works the brakes pretty hard. You're on them hard at the end of the start straight, second turn. There's a lot of hard braking around this track. And actually, they've got new Brembo monoblock calipers. They're 70 grams lighter than the old ones, and exactly as you'd expect from very top spec Brembo brakes. Consistent, powerful performance for the whole of the session. Doesn't matter how hard you push it, how ham-fisted you are on the brakes. You've got nice, solid, consistent lever feel time after time. The only limit with the braking is the old jelly arms. It really is one of those bikes you are braking so hard on it by 6 laps. You need some good fitness to be hanging on to it. So styling. So Ducati has to look good, and yeah, it's fair to say the Panigale has kind of probably split a few opinions over the years, not as much as maybe the old 999s did, but I still think the Panigale is a stunning bike. A lot of people were surprised that Ducati retained the Panigale name and the Panigale look despite changing to a V4, and that probably sums up best their vision for this bike. It is meant to be an evolution of the Panigale. It's not a whole new, complete different take on Ducati's hyperbike. The Panigale V4 is a Panigale, true and true. It feels like a Panigale, but an evolution, a step on. I feel like I've just waxed lyrical about this new Panigale, but sorry, that's the truth. It's a damn good bike. And if anyone can come here and ride around this Valencia circuit and moan about the bike, then check your pulse, there's something wrong with you. It is an incredible bike. There's always niggles, there's always things that, you know, crop up, personal taste, personal feels. I definitely felt the only thing that bugged me about the bike all day was the quick shifter. It has a clutchless up and down gear shift, as most of the new superbikes do. The downshift works absolutely incredibly. Just brake, tap the gears down, it does all the blipping, does all the engine brake control, and then you turn in. On the way up the gears, particularly if the wheelie control or traction control was kicking in, I did find a few times the upshift was a bit hesitant and the bike kind of bogged as I tried to get up the gears. I got to qualify that. Throughout the day, it got better and better. So I really think it's one of those things you have to learn. You can't just get on the bike and be perfect on the quick shifter straight away. But by the end of a day's riding, you've kind of learned the system and learned the feel of it, and you start avoiding those missed shifts. What it's done, this bike, is it's brought very, very high performance and very fast lap times accessible to all riders. And it was real clear on the track today. We had a huge mix of riders and abilities on the group. And if you caught up with a slower rider, as you came out of the corner, if he had the inclination to pin the throttle to the stop, you couldn't get past him. It doesn't matter how fast you were, because the bike just does all the work for you. I think in years to come, we're going to look back at this bike and see it as the one that moved on-track performance onwards. If you want to buy a bike tomorrow and go really, really fast around the track, that is the one for the job. That bike will make you a riding god.